So Marty, no pronouns preferred, calling from Missouri, wants to know about what we would require for proof of a God. How you doing, Marty?
Oh, cool.
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. I'm from Missouri,
day,
so I'm
Where in Missouri?
Well, I was born in North Kansas City, but I graduated from Francis Howell in St. Charles.
That explains the attitude.
Yep.
Oh, I get it.
You got to show me.
Missouri.
It's
from Missouri.
We get feisty down here, man.
Well, I'm in Texas now, so you're up in the, the colloquial direction. Anyway, what do you got for us?
Yeah. Well, I guess my question is number one, like, what would you require to believe in a God? I guess would be the first thing, or what would be the attributes or the explanations, like, meaning, like, does it have to have infinite intelligence? Is there a super or metaphysical aspect, that sort of thing? Number one. And then I had to follow up just quick.
Yeah, you completely jumped from what evidence would you need for a God, and then started listing characteristics of a God. The characteristics of a God aren't evidence, but you would have to give me the characteristics in order for me to know what kind of evidence might be required. But generally speaking, for gods, here's my answer. I have no idea what evidence should convince me that a God exists, because I think it would take, hang on, I'm not done. But if there is a God, any God worth the label should know exactly what it would take to convince me and should be capable of providing that evidence. And that has never happened, which means either that God doesn't exist or it doesn't want me to know it exists yet. But to presume that I have the knowledge and intelligence to be able to distinguish the difference between one advanced technology that I don't understand, one magical supernatural thing that I don't understand, and a God is arrogant beyond measure. And I don't know how other people do it. I don't know how people say, I've been able to tell that's a God.
Yeah, that's my big thing is, like, if I were to go back to like the 1400s with a megaphone, a cell phone, and a decent card trick and a pocket lighter, like, they would probably consider me a god as well. Like that. So if there were aliens with super advanced technology, they might convince me that was a god. If I had a psychotic break, I might be convinced that there was a god. If there was a gas leak in my house, I might be convinced of a god. If I was drugged, I might be convinced of a god. There are a lot of reasons why something might seem supernatural and extraordinary and beyond explanation and all these things. And if I were to see those things, I would then say, okay, I have no idea what this is. I have no label for this. I have nowhere to go with this. To actually get me to saying this is for sure a god, it's a tough one to say. But just to parrot, Matt, if God is real, God knows. Matt, you had your finger up for a second. What were you saying?
Yeah. I want you to get to your second point, Marty, but also I was going to ask what convinced you, but what's more important is, what do you think should convince us?
That is a good question.
Well, okay. Well, then I can actually just talk about one of the things that actually convinced me that there was a God, and not even any particular God necessarily, or what would I'll say this, what you could call a grand architect or some sort of intelligent designer, right? Okay. The thing that would convince me of that. What's that?
Wait, are you saying the thing that would convince you, or the thing that did convince you?
No, the thing I'm going to talk about, the thing that did convince me of an intelligent designer.
Sure.
And that would be essentially mathematics itself.
Mathematics what?
Mathematics itself.
Okay.
The entire subject of mathematics. And
really,
I'll give you a few reasons why. Number one, when you say it's a concept, right? Okay, we could say yes, because what is the definition of concept here? I got it right here. It's an abstract idea or thought that is the foundation for mere concrete beliefs, thoughts, and principles, right? So we could say that concept obviously is the etymology of conceive, right? So we conceive this in our mind as if we just think this up as just an idea, but yet this idea, quote unquote, of mathematics is universal in every person's mind. Meaning, there's a number line, right? And when we look at whole numbers or integers, we have a number line. That number line goes 1, what's after 1, 2, what's after 2, 3. that number line is universal for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're atheist, agnostic, if you believe in God, what your language is, when you lived, where on earth you live.
Sure. So
and
what?
It's universal for every person. It's also
You know what
the
else is
basis
universal?
of every science you do.
Yeah, physics is universal.
Yes, but where does this math come from? Because this math is not physical, as
Marty.
you know.
So that's Marty. That is a huge debate: is whether math is discovered or invented. Math could very well be just a product of. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Matt. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm just saying. You said, "Where does it come from?" That's a presumption on your part that it comes from someplace.
Yeah. So
well,
that's the thing. Is like
it either has to be conceived in our as Forrest was just saying, it either has to be conceived in our mind, or we have to extract it directly from nature itself. So either way, where does it come from? The question is, is mathematics itself an emergent property of the evolutionary, all the evolution of the universe since the Big Bang? We actually use mathematics to understand this alleged Big Bang. That's what we use. So then we have to ask, when did this whole thing come in? Because we also have to realize a few things here about math. Number one, universality of it, the fact that it is metaphysical, but does actually bleed into, if you will, that's probably a terrible way to say that, but a physicality. We can look at a snowflake. We can look at loads of things, like how a beehive works. You can see clear geometry there that you can either say, okay, are we looking into the physical world itself and extracting that out, or is it, are we conceiving in our mind? If we're conceiving in our mind, then we should be able to change the properties of the numbers themselves. And let me explain.
No.
Meaning, number one, you have a number.
There's a lot there. Let's deal with what you just said. Let's deal with what you just said.
No, we're not holding on.
Hold on.
No, you don't get to tell us to hold on.
Okay.
What are you laughing at? Here, let me put you on fucking mute and you hold on for a second. Don't tell us to hold on. We're in charge of the show. Some of us have done this for 20 fucking years and have heard the same things over and over again. We're going to ask specific questions designed to get to a better understanding and to let the people who are watching know, because sometimes we're going to talk past each other. I'm going to have some understanding, Forrest's going to have a different understanding, you're going to have a different understanding, and we need to get on the same page. But at no point do you tell us to hold on. It's us. We will tell you to hold on.
We also just let you talk for like 5 minutes explaining this thing, and like now we have some questions. So you just gave us a lot of stuff. We're going to parse through it first. Imagine if we let you just give your whole thing and we didn't care about the very first thing. It would be so unproductive for everybody, right? None of that would be relevant.
So this notion about abstractions and mathematics, why would you think that mathematics points to any being at all?
Can I speak now? Am I unmuted?
Did you hear me ask you a question? Did you hear me ask you a question?
I didn't know if I was unmuted. You said
Did you hear me ask you a question?
You yelled at me, and so
Did you hear me? All right, now I'm going to fucking mute you. When you hear me ask you a question and pause, in normal human conversations, asking someone a question and pausing is their indicator that now it's time for them to talk. It's not an indicator for them to say, can I talk now? Because that sounds whiny. So with an abstraction like mathematics, why do you think it points to a being?
Number one, we don't even necessarily need to call God, quote unquote, a being. But beyond that, beyond any descriptors of God whatsoever, what we do have within mathematics, once again, is what I was going to say is, as you walk up this number line goes infinitely, number one. And when you look at every single one of those numbers, they have their own particular qualities, their own particular attributes, their own divisors, their prime numbers, non-prime numbers. And I know those are categories, quote unquote, but those are categories within this entire study of mathematics. So my question is, number one, so where does this whole thing, mathematics, come from? if it's not something that we can get directly from the physical world, if it's not an emergent property of evolution, then where does this quote-unquote metaphysical math that's just allegedly a concept, as you're saying, in your mind, except this concept is universal in all of our minds? So my question
Are you
is,
talking
that
about
points to
when
a
you say
source, and
when you
at
said
point-
that was one question. When you say math, are you talking? You keep saying math and you keep saying numbers, and those aren't necessarily the same thing. Like numbers
They're not.
can just be things, and you can do math with them, but like I'm trying to understand like where your actual argument is. Are you saying that the fact that humans are able to count? I am asking a question. Are you saying that humans being able to count in the first place is evidence of this higher power? Are you saying our assignment of labels to numbers that are countable or uncountable in any way, that's the thing? You reference the concept of infinity. How important actually is infinity? Like, I don't understand where you're going from. You're throwing a lot of stuff at us all at once, each one of which has like 5 questions involved.
Okay, well, for us to be able to count, that number system has to be in place in the first place. Because if it's not in the place in the first place, and we count and we just made those numbers up, then we should be able to manipulate the attributes and qualities of those numbers, but we cannot. Those numbers.
You didn't answer my question. You didn't answer my question. I'm sorry, you didn't answer my question, and it may be because hold on. It may be because I didn't get across what I'm saying properly. Because like what you just said doesn't make any sense to me, and I want to get further into it. When you said that when we count, that's because a number system exists. What do you mean by that? Do you mean to say, because there's a couple ways I can interpret that. Are you meaning to say that like the fact that certain numbers of things exist and therefore we can prescribe numbers or concepts of numbers or whatever the hell to the fact that I have 5 fingers on this hand? The objective reality is that there is more than one finger, so I have established a number that I'm calling 5 to denote this many fingers. Like, is that what you're saying? Or are you saying that like the number 5 by any name is this ethereal perfect thing, like an Aristotelian form that exists somewhere in the world? Like what are you saying?
Okay.
Was that Plato or Aristotle? It doesn't matter.
I'm going to try to answer. I'm going to try to answer your question, because I think what you're asking is like the number 7, number 1, regardless of language or what actual character or symbol is used to denote the quote unquote number. I guess the question would be to you guys: do you think that the number 7 exists?
No, but also
I believe
you said. Sorry,
I'm sorry. I believe that 7 things exist.
The number.
So, like, if there are 7 things, then I can call that 7.
In order to believe, yes, but you can call it 7. But as soon as you say 7, you're not just saying a quantity of number. You're actually also bringing into it a quality, and you also, and to answer the question about when you say mathematics. Hold on.
No,
that's the issue.
Don't you fucking tell me to hold on.
That's the issue.
So first of all,
you just said,
don't just stop talking and listen. Just stop talking for a second. You said numbers have qualities. Is 111 prime? Because prime was a quality that you mentioned when you're wrong.
Yeah.
You're wrong. You're wrong. 111 is
111 is no 111
stop talking. Stop talking and listen, and you'll fucking learn something. 111 is not prime in base 10, but it is prime in base 2 and base 3. The quality that you were trying to attribute to the number is not a function of the number. It is a function of the number interacting with the system, which does not exist. Numbers can be played with and counted and moved in a number of different ways. The things that you want to point to as a quality of the number is actually a complex, emergent interaction, but of that number with other numbers, depending on the system that it's in. That was the point. You have oversimplified numbers. You have oversimplified. Now, are you getting ready to say, where do they come from?
No, I was going to say.
What were you going to say?
When you look at what I was going to say is, to answer your question about what is mathematics, mathematics is not actually just numbers. It's also numbers and the relationship to geometry.
Nobody said math was numbers. Nobody said that.
Yeah, if you're not going to argue, if you're not going to argue with what, shut up. If you're not going to argue with what we actually say, I don't want to talk to you. So stop saying we say, implying or saying, stop talking and saying or implying we said something we didn't fucking say.
I wasn't.
You just did.
You literally just did. You literally, shut up. You literally just implied that we said math is just numbers. If you did not imply that, why then would you say math isn't just numbers?
If I'm sorry if that was misconstrued, but I'm saying that what I'm presenting is saying that when I speak about mathematics as the subject in general, this includes an umbrella, of course, of numbers, and we have to discuss what numbers are, but then also whatever those numbers are, we also have to, whatever based system we're using, why should those numbers have any relationship to the geometry which we find in physical form? Why is there even any of that at all? Because once again, as I asked, is that our numbers an emergent property of matter, of this the evolution of just, cells and all that sort of stuff, or did it exist intrinsically within the evolution? The evolution that finally made, as you guys believe, monkeys to us. That's my question.
So a while ago, when you very first started down this road, I brought up the fact that this is an ongoing debate about whether math is discovered or invented. Because the fact is that, taking it to physics, the planets speak math, the galaxy speaks math, your circulatory system speaks math. Physics is this universal thing that is applicable all over the place, and it tells us how the universe works from the very smallest to very largest scale. However, our models, our systems, are things that we have derived and that aren't always accurate at all scales. The fact that there's a totally different set of rules for quantum physics versus classical mechanics versus general relativity, very different kinds of mathematics for different scales of things, is a little bit of a reason to say that, okay, this is actually just us describing what's happening in the universe, not actually learning what the universe is doing, as you could argue is what, so there's actually different ways to look at this, and you're presenting this as if it's this absolute truth that we're discovering, which is one side of a very big and damn near unsolvable debate that's been going on for centuries. And you're trying to prescribe, okay, this is what God is, or this is evidence for some sort of a God. And I don't think that's reasonable. And I would ask you, just keeping on the topic of physics, I don't know what the numbers are for specifically mathematicians, but I do know that among religiosity among scientists, physicists tend to have some of the lowest rates of belief in any gods. Atheism is highest among physicists, biologists, and geologists, I think, among the scientists. Well, and so why is it, if math is this universal language that is proving us that God is real, why is it the people who study that stuff for a living so frequently disagree with you and say that this isn't a reason to believe in a God at all?
Well, regardless of that doesn't answer any of the questions that I posed. It doesn't matter. I
just asked you a question. I would appreciate if you answer it.
Okay, I'm going to solve this. I'm going to solve this really easily. I'm going to solve this really quickly and easily. First of all, you asked about why do numbers seem to interact with patterns in nature, and that's because some things are quantifiable, and we use numbers to describe that. But let's assume for a second that we didn't know anything at all about the questions you're asking about numbers. Let's say we didn't know a thing, and my answer is I don't know. Here's my question to you, Marty. How do you know that it's God, and what do you mean by God?
Well, actually, number one, the notion of math itself, if you will, and pointing to number one, as I said, no particular God, no religious belief, no denomination, no spiritual belief or anything like that, just the idea that there is an intelligent designer. When you look at math, as I said, when you say, hey, Forrest just said, hey, we use math in this and quantum physics and all this other stuff. But what is the commonality? What is the universality of that?
Don't ask a question. Answer the question.
And I'm just getting to it. Please just give me a little leeway here a second. Thank you. And so what I was saying is, like, when I see that, when I see numbers, when I see that numbers themselves have an order, they literally have a particular order, which actually says what? What does order tell us? At least for me, when I see order, that at least it leads to some sort of design. Now, we could argue about that or whatever, but mathematics itself has a
it's incremental.
Order. Well, no,
it's
I'm not
incremental. It is the property of addition. Stop talking. It's incremental. The fact that numbers progress in increment by 1 is us, but we're setting aside whether or not it's a discovery. What do you mean by God?
Well, number one, when we talk about as I said, like, if the only thing I'm going to say about God, when I mean God,
what do you mean by God?
This is an intelligent designer. That's all I'll say about it.
What is the demonstration? What is the demonstration? What is the demonstration? What is the fucking? All right, I'm going to mute you. What is the demonstration that the fact that numbers increment is confirmation of an intelligent designer? Go.
Because it points to the fact that, number one, that shows intelligence itself, because we use numbers itself.
Marty. Okay, I'm going to mute you again. I'm going to mute you every fucking time you do this. You ready? You said it points to the fact and we use numbers. No. What specifically about numbers, the quantities incrementing, points to an intelligent designer? Where is your demonstration that isn't just the way it is and the only way it could be? Where's your demonstration that a God is required to explain that, or an intelligent designer is required to explain that?
Well, when you say when it is, what do you mean by it is? What do you mean it is? I asked you, was math?
Okay. I'm asking you, you're the one who believes that we need an explanation for why numbers increment. And you believe that you have the explanation that it's intelligently designed. I'm not convinced that any explanation is needed or possible. I don't have any reason to believe that it could be any other way. And in the absence of everything, in the absence of a universe, in the absence of a multiverse, the truth that we have identified exists just the same. It doesn't change. If you eliminate every single mind and every particle of matter in every possible universe, 1 + 1 is still 2, the concepts that we're conveying. The very notion that you think that needs an explanation and that it must be, or probably is, an intelligent designer is hereby rejected. You cannot claim that you have an explanation for something without showing that an explanation is needed and that it is not merely just the way it is. Just like the laws of logic, from which mathematics are derivative, you have identity, non-contradiction, and excluded middle. A thing is what it is, it's not what it's not, and everything is neither or both. So, where's the demonstration that math needs a grounded explanation?
That math needs a grounded explanation?
Yes.
It just is. In other words, none of us can deny the fact that there's a number 1, there's a number 2, there's a number 3. You denied that there's a number 7. If you're denying a number 7,
I did not deny there's a number 7. I did not deny there's a number 7, Marty. I said I don't believe that it exists as a thing. But go ahead, Forrest.
No, it's fine. I have a totally different line of question, because it's very clear that this isn't going to go
anywhere. Do a different
We're
line of question, because mine's not working.
It's it's not just yours. It's both of us, because it's very clear that Marty is kind of stuck on this concept. And so I just want to try a different approach for just a second, Marty, what is the difference between what you're saying to us right now and when a creationist tells me about irreducible complexity and saying there's things like eyes and ears and wings and stuff, and these are all so perfect that they just couldn't have possibly evolved? I understand that there's a different arguments. I understand why, but I'm saying on a fundamental level, like, what's the actual difference between that and you sitting here saying, oh, there's this numbers, there's this math stuff that's like so perfect and so big, therefore it must be a god?
Well, to be honest, I didn't call in about that, nor was I asserting anything that evolution couldn't do that or that there is.
Didn't say you were. I asked you, what is the difference?
What is it? What is the difference between what? I'm sorry.
Again,
please
I didn't say you were calling about that. I didn't say you were calling about that. I asked, what's the difference fundamentally between your argument here saying that math is this big, complex, universal thing that's fundamental and therefore blah, 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 God, and a creationist saying that XYZ thing is so, big and complex and difficult it must be God designing it? Because that is the fundamental thing, is that it's there must be an intelligent designer because this thing is so incredible, is so complex, is so universal, is so fundamental, is so anything. X is so Y that it must have an intelligent designer. I don't see, that's the fundamental argument that I'm hearing, and I'm asking you if you can make a distinction between them.
Oh, well, no, I don't. I mean, I don't. I'm not here to make a distinction between those things. I don't even know what I would say about that, to be honest. That's all. Well,
the reason I'm asking is because that kind of concept is really, really not useful for me at all to demonstrate an intelligent designer. And that's what it sounds like you're saying. And so, if that's what I'm going to argue against now, which I would like to, because that's what it sounds like to me, and I have arguments against that, I was giving you an opportunity to say that's not what I mean, and here's why. But if you don't have a distinction, then that's the path that I would go on with this call.
Then I will say this, if I may, though mathematics is a very useful concept to you, though, right? You use it in every facet of every science, whether that's chemistry, physics,
so is evolution,
quantum physics.
So is evolution.
Trigonometry.
Evolution is extreme.
Exactly.
Yes. So is evolution. Evolution is extremely useful, and it impacts every part of your life. And so that doesn't answer anything about what I just said.
Well, no, because what I was saying is, originally from this conversation, is that here we have a universal a system that we use to explain reality. You use it in literally every single science to explain away God. It is ordered. Every single one of those numbers, once again, has a correlate in geometry. Every single one of those numbers has particular qualities to them. Not one human being can change the particular qualities of those numbers.
These are all things you've said. These are all things you've said 5 times over the course of this call. My question is, even if we can't explain it, because you were saying it needs to be explained, you had this argument with Matt about whether or not it needs to be explained, it doesn't matter. If we can't explain it, let's say that I agree with you, that I have no explanation for what math is, where it comes from. It's just this huge, crazy universal thing that ties the whole universe together, and whatever else I have no explanation for God, for mathematics, and I have no understanding of it whatsoever. It's amazing, it's beautiful, it's big, blah, blah, blah. How does that then necessitate an intelligent designer? Why doesn't that necessitate saying, I don't know what this is. It's very big and it seems to be ubiquitous and it's very cool, and I don't know what it is or where it comes from. Why do you then make the leap to say, I don't know, therefore there's this guy who did it this way?
Well, I mean, I'm not even necessarily saying there's some guy that did it this way. In fact, when you asked why, in fact, Matt asked, what? If a being.
You could actually answer.
You said intelligent
question.
Designer.
Yeah.
It's a guy.
Yeah.
Colloquially, we're not saying that by guy, we're not saying man or dude. We're using a colloquialism for your intelligent fucking designer. And now you're backing off of that?
Oh, okay. Thank you. No,
Thank you.
I appreciate the clarity. Yeah. Okay.
So answer
why do you
Forrest's
make the
question,
so, yeah.
which is
I don't know
by
where
the
you
way,
wanna
answer Forrest's question, which is by the way my question from a while ago.
I just came at it from a different
Sure.
angle.
Yeah. What can you ask it again, please, concisely?
Jesus.
Since you both asked.
Sure. Why, even if I accept that this is something that is universal and eternal and unexplainable, why are you comfortable, instead of just saying, I don't know what this is and I'd like to know more, instead saying, I don't know what this is, therefore there's a magic involved. There's some being that made it this way.
Well, I'll tell you personally why. I don't know if you guys are going to agree with this, but please let me at least flesh this out. I would say, number one, when we talk about numbers, just as we said, there's a number line. That number line goes into infinity.
I'm going to mute you because we don't need yet another fucking repeated description about the number line. Answer the fucking question or get the fuck out. Try again.
Because we have that and it's infinite, that gives us a universal thing that actually tells us that there is an infinite intelligence right there. Number one.
No, sir.
How do you draw that? No, it doesn't. How do you make that connection? I just said a second ago. I'm sorry, you go ahead, Matt.
No, we're both saying exactly. Forrest and I are both literally saying, we just asked you, what about this? Why do you say there must be an intelligent designer rather than I don't know? And your answer is because it points to an intelligent designer. If you say anything that dumb again, I will fucking hang up. So please tell us what about it points to an intelligent designer. Last fucking chance.
Okay, the numbers go infinitely. Those numbers are ordered. That speaks to order. Those numbers also give rise to form, which actually we can see in the physical world. Those things we can actually, once again, are universal and are available to all people.
Why does that point to an intelligent designer? How can you demonstrate that it's possible? Can you demonstrate? Can you shut up? Can you demonstrate? Can you shut the fuck up and listen? Can you demonstrate that it's possible for numbers to have not been infinite and ordered?
Can you?
No, but I'm not saying that. You're saying because they're infinite and ordered, that means they must have been intelligently designed. That is a complete non sequitur that you need to justify, but you haven't even justified that they could have been any other way. If something could not have been any other way, then it wasn't designed. It was inevitable.
You can't prove a negative. So you were saying,
yes, you can prove a negative. Yes, you can prove a negative. Yes, you can prove a negative. That's what falsifiability is all about, is demonstrating that a particular claim is not true. What you cannot do is prove a universal negative. But the issue here is you're saying that because numbers are infinite and ordered, that means they were intelligently designed. You still have, that is the claim. That is the beginning claim. That is the first sentence that when you called in, you could have said, because numbers are infinite and ordered, I believe they're designed. And we would then say, why do you believe they're designed? Merely because they're infinite and ordered. And do you have any way to show that they could have been any other way? That's the question that we've been asking you. And now we've been at it for 32 fucking minutes. So if numbers are infinite and ordered, why does that indicate that there in fact was an intelligent designer? Last fucking chance, not even remotely kidding.
Because we use it to explain every single science out there.
Goodbye.
Yeah,
Goodbye.
Dude, you could have said the same thing about logic. Why did you pick math as this weird arbitrary thing? Like that's it's so strange.
Here's the problem, Marty.
Again,
go ahead.
It's not, I'm sorry. It's not any different. That's the point I was trying to make. It is absolutely no different than an intelligent design argument from any other thing. You can't explain, how complex photosynthesis is, therefore God. You can't explain how planets form, therefore God. You can't explain what's holding galaxies together. Dark matter is this ethereal thing, therefore God. You can't explain mathematics, therefore God. It doesn't matter. It's just this weird, I think it's Thomas Aquinas style shit of like, there's this concept of order and infinity, therefore there must be a thing that's orderly and infinite that made it that way. Like, why? Why is that the case? Why do you make a leap? Why can't you just say, I don't understand this concept, it's really cool, maybe I should become a mathematician and learn about it? Instead, it's just, this is fucking interesting. Jesus did
also,
it. Why?
the thing that you're trying to explain maybe isn't even a real thing that needs to be explained or anything else. So here's the sum total of substance that we got out of Marty today. Because numbers are infinite and ordered, they must have a designer. And when we say why, Marty says, because we use it. Well, I'm sorry, the fact that I use something also doesn't mean it's designed or designed for that use. So Marty, I've given you a million chances and you cannot put together an argument that is both valid and sound, that begins with numbers are infinite and ordered and concludes with, therefore an intelligent designer designed them. You have failed epically. Thank you for calling.
That content though.
This is beyond useless. So here's the thing. Yeah, we're not going to get into the debate about whether or not mathematics is discovered or created, because I think there are elements of both in there. We have certainly created different mathematics, and we basically, base 10 is because I got 10 fingers. That's one of the reasons.
Also, other cultures used other bases. Like there's some cultures use base 5. There's some cultures that have like done other shit with like base 8 and stuff like this. If it's so universal, I don't know.
And in every one of those, what we're doing is we're beginning with a quantity, which by the way is recognizable. No matter what the language is, no matter what the number is, I'm holding up 2 cans. And when I say 2 cans, I'm speaking English and I'm referring to any base more than 2. That is the label that I put on this quantity of cans. But that doesn't in
not sponsored
any way,
by San Pellegrino.
Yeah, we should be. I fucking A. If San Pellegrino, if you want to sponsor us, I will talk to the guy that owns this place because I love that stuff. But we begin with observations. And really, the concept of zero, which seems intuitive and obvious to all of us now, was still something that was essentially invented / discovered. We're not going to settle that debate today. And we know roughly when and by whom and how this starts working. But we begin with, I am an identity. I am one. I am me. But I have more than one arm. So when we start dividing me, we increase the quantity of the particular components. I have 2 arms, but each one of those arms is divided into, let's say, 3 arbitrary divisions, my upper arm, my lower arm, and my hand. And my hand is divided into 5 digits, but each of those have multiple phalanges. And so even just within myself, there are ways to identify quantity. And it doesn't matter whether I'm putting them in English with the labels that I'm most comfortable with, or in Spanish, dos arms. But the quantities are things that we recognize and can interact with. And the reason that math seems so impressive is that I can write things down in a mathematical language, which the languages of mathematics we invented. There's no conceptual 2 floating out there in the universe, and there's no governing intelligence saying, oh, here's what 2 is quantifiably, or at least nobody's been able to present one or identify one. Marty is just looking at, wow, it seems there's a lot of order, and that seems to be intelligently designed. But you have to demonstrate, if something is designed, you have to demonstrate that it could have been designed differently. Because if God made math, but it could only have been the way it is, then There's no intelligent design required because there's no intelligence and there's no designing. It is simply an instantiation of a brute fact. And if it's just the case, because we play with numbers and numbers are our plaything, just like words are our plaything, the concept, and by the way, Forrest and I have been speaking in words, primarily in English, throughout the entire show. Those words are things that we invented. But the concepts that those words point to are not necessarily things we invented. In some cases, this cell phone is something that we invented. A tree is not something that we invented. And yet both of those exist as concepts, brain states in my mind. Don't confuse the map for the place. That's fallacious. Don't confuse the linguistical model with the concept, and don't confuse the concept with the brute fact. Mathematics is derived from the very basics of logic, of identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle, and pushing forward. But we're about to lose Forrest, and we have 3 calls left. We don't do super chats on the Sunday show after dark, but
I'm just fine.
I don't know how you can be fine. It's wild. Let me do one more show announcement. We'll take the last couple calls here. As a reminder, Skep Talks tomorrow with John Gleason and Paul Ince. Oh, no. Yes, sorry. I've got 2 weeks up here and I got confused because I'm not doing my show. Tuesday the 24th at 6 p.m. There's going to be Eve and Alyssa on Chewed Gum. Thursday's Transatlantic Call-In show is going to be at 2 p.m. Central with Josie and Luxander. Next Sunday on the regular Sunday show, I will be back again with Forrest Valkai. How fucking cool is that? So on the 29th, 1 week from today, 2 of us will be here, but at 2 p.m., hopefully we don't wake Forrest up too early.
Hopefully my clock will be reset by then. I don't know.
If it's not, we will have the same fun.
I exist in, like, I was talking to Arden about this beforehand, and like I think she understands. I like phase through. I have like a 30-hour cycle instead of a 24-hour cycle, and so I just like phase through life weirdly, especially if I don't have a set schedule on things. It's bad.
Thanks for watching that clip. Hey, we're trying to do some data research about whether or not our callers successfully proved that God existed. If they didn't, don't forget to like and subscribe. That's how we know they failed. But if you don't like and subscribe, you're saying that they succeeded. So you're saying that by liking and subscribing, you will be affirming that you are an atheist. Hey, what else should they do?
I don't know. Maybe go to patreon.com/calltheline and donate some of their hard-earned money.
Like and subscribe.